They hated me when I cared. They hated me when I stayed silent. They just hated. It never mattered what I gave. It was never enough. They were never going to clap for you. Never going to see the nights you didn't sleep, the battles you fought behind your smile. Funny, isn't it? How you bleed for people, and they still call you the villain. You carry their weight, bury your pain, bite your tongue, and they still throw stones like you never held them up. You offered your heart. They spit on it. You showed mercy. They called you weak. You tried to understand them. They used your silence as rope to hang your name. They twisted every act of grace into guilt, every sacrifice into shame. Because people don't want to admit they broke the ones who tried to save them. And still, you sat there waiting. For what? Redemption? A thank you? Applause? Let me say it clearly. They were never going to clap for you. Not when you lost, not when you rose, not even when you broke yourself just to keep the peace. So stop begging for the approval of cowards. Stop performing for people who close their eyes the moment you cry. Stop hoping they'll finally understand the pain they caused. They won't. They never will. So why the hell are you still waiting for their permission to be powerful? Their praise, it's poison dipped in perfume. They don't clap because they love you. They clap because you haven't threatened them yet. They pretend you're one of them until your fire burns brighter than theirs. Then suddenly, you're too much, too intense, too different. They smiled when I entered the room, but not because they were glad I arrived. They smiled to measure the distance between their lips and my back. They cheered when I fell, not because I lost, but because it wasn't them. That's what they don't say out loud, that they're glad it was your name in the fire, not theirs, that you took the hit. So they didn't have to. I laughed with them, ate with them, died a little for them, every single day. And all the while, they sharpened their smiles into blades, fed me sugar while hiding the cyanide, clapped for my speeches, and prayed for my silence. Behind every compliment, envy. Behind every toast, resentment. Behind every smile, a dagger. You think you're surrounded by friends? Look again. It's a circus, and you're the act, the entertainment, the distraction from their own insignificance. They don't want you to win. They want you to perform until you collapse. But here's the thing. I've stopped performing. Now I'm the one holding the knife. Was I the monster? Or just the mask they needed me to be? I started questioning everything, every choice, every word, every silence, trying to trace back the moment I became their villain. I tried to be the good one, the calm one, the one who waits, who forgives, who folds, who bleeds just enough not to make them uncomfortable. But no matter how much I bent, they only wanted me broken, cracked down the middle, tamed, erased. I looked in the mirror one night, and I didn't recognize who was staring back. The smile was gone. The light, gone. All that remained was the outline of someone who gave too much for too long. I asked myself, is this who I've become, or who they made me? Because when you're constantly told you're the problem, you start to believe it. You start to tear pieces off yourself, just to be more palatable, more silent, more acceptable. But the truth? The mirror cracked, but it never shattered. They tried to erase me, but in their attempt to kill my spirit, They uncovered something worse, because somewhere, buried under the silence, beneath the ashes of who I used to be, I remembered who I was, and that memory, that ember, that's what they should have feared all along. They hate what they don't understand, and they'll never understand power. Because real power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't beg to be liked. It doesn't kneel. You speak truth. They call it cruelty. You fight back. They call it madness. You build alone, and they call you arrogant. But stay quiet, and they say you're hiding something. Smile. They say you're fake. Cry. They say you're weak. Bleed. They say you deserved it. So what now? Smile. They hate. Cry. They laugh. Disappear. They forget. So give them something they'll never forget. Let your name echo where their love never reached. Let your silence haunt them longer than your presence ever could. Because no matter what you do, they will hate you. Not because you're wrong, not because you're evil, but because you refuse to shrink. Because you remind them of everything they could have been, but were too scared to become. If I'm going to be hated, then I'll be the villain they fear in their sleep, the shadow in their stories, the silence between their sentences, the storm they whisper about, but never dare to face. They made their choice, so I made mine. No more soft-spoken apologies, no more playing small to keep them comfortable. Let them tremble, let them point fingers, let them scream my name like a warning. Because now, I wear their hatred like a crown. A lion doesn't ask sheep to like him. He doesn't explain his roar. He doesn't shrink to fit the pasture. He rules, even when they pray he won't. I've killed the version of me that begged for kindness. He was weak. He thought if he gave enough, they'd see his worth. He thought love was earned through pain. He was wrong. I buried him. The world doesn't reward the silent. It devours them. And I've tasted that silence, choked on it. Let it teach me everything I needed to know about people, about power, about me. I won't kneel again. Not for their love. Not for their lies. Not for their forgiveness wrapped in conditions. They crowned the fake, the puppet, the smiling mask that played nice while burning inside. They gave the throne to the obedient and wondered why it crumbled under his touch. But me, I became the storm, not because I wanted revenge, but because I understood one thing they never did. You don't earn power by waiting. You take it by becoming undeniable. Now I smile, not out of joy, out of calculation, out of knowing I don't need their permission to rule, out of knowing the same people who doubted me now speak my name with trembling respect. Let them call me cold. Let them call me cruel. Let them call me a villain, as long as they never again dare to call me weak. I gave them peace. They gave me war. So I became war. I laid down my weapons. They loaded theirs. I opened my hands. They bit them. And when I finally struck back, they called me the monster. They screamed for the hero. After they murdered him in me. Their rules, irrelevant. Their lines, crossed and erased. Their mercy, too late. I don't play by the script they wrote. I tore it in half the moment they laughed at my pain. The moment they used my silence as proof I had nothing left. Let them scream. Let them point fingers. Let them build shrines to the version of me they destroyed. They had their chance. And they chose betrayal. They chose war. so I chose to finish it. The villain they created doesn't need applause, doesn't need forgiveness, doesn't need to be loved, just feared. If the world burns because of me, let it burn. Let it turn to ash, to smoke, to silence. But let it burn brighter than their lies, hotter than their fake halos, louder than their cowardice. Because this time, the fire answers to me. I wasn't born to be understood. I was born to be remembered. They tried to paint me as chaos, but I was order, the kind they couldn't control, the kind that didn't kneel. Heroes fade in stories. Their kindness gets diluted, their smiles forgotten, their names softened into bedtime lies. But villains are carved in stone, remembered for generations, not because they were loved, but because they refused to be erased. One day they'll tell the story, not the whole truth, just enough to make it feel like a warning. And they'll say, he was too much, too sharp, too loud, too ruthless, but never, he was weak. I didn't come this far to be clapped for. I didn't claw my way from the ashes for their applause. I rose for the silence, for the echo that lingers long after the fire dies. In the silence they gave me, I forged my name. They wanted a puppet. They got a prophecy. One written in scars, spoken in storms, etched into the bones of those who doubted me. Let them bury me in whispers. My legacy will scream louder than they ever could. Because I don't need to be loved. I just need to be impossible to forget.